Hey everybody, it's Brian. Before I did this Seahawks stuff full time, I worked as a manager and senior leader, so I know how lonely it can be to try to find someone you trust to talk through people issues, org issues, process issues as you try to lead an organization. Ryan Cleveland of RyanCleveland.com is someone I trust to have those conversations with. He specializes in working with CEOs and business owners, and you can get a complimentary free discovery session to see if it's a good fit for you. Just go to RyanCleveland.com to sign up and start now. Hello, welcome to another episode of Real Hawk Talk. I'm Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Facebook, TikTok now, at Hawk Blogger. It's all happening. Give us as many follows as you can on TikTok. We're trying to get to 1,000 follows quickly so we can start doing live shows there as well. And tonight on episode, what is this? 344 of Real Hawk Talk. We get to talk with Jeff Simmons at Real Jeff Simmons, Nathan Ernst at Nathan E11 about your first place 8-5 Seattle Seahawks. And I got to bring you guys in because I want to know how weird I am and how weird you guys might be. So like, this is an open discussion, and we're all friends here. So like, say your piece. I spend a lot of time talking, writing, thinking about the Seahawks, right? Like an unusual, like for certainly a weird amount of time. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do a show tonight at 6. I want to go sit in front of the TV and just unwind a little bit, and then get ready for the show. And I sit down, I'm deciding what to watch, and I turn on the Seahawks game from Sunday because I haven't watched the broadcast copy. How weird is that? Who wants to go first? Jeff? Nathan?
Totally normal. I'll go. Totally normal. I think it's, yeah, why wouldn't you? That was from the broadcast though?
Yes.
Okay, broadcast's a little weird. Maybe you gotta at least go like condensed version, right?
Well, I've definitely seen some of the all 22, but like I kind of just wanted to hear and watch. You kind of get a little bit more of the fan experience watching the broadcast. Like, what did it feel like? And that was a fun game. That was a fun first half, especially. And I kind of wanted to hear what they were saying about it. It's just a little bit of a sickness, though, isn't it, Jeff, to like spend this much time thinking about one thing?
I am in no position to judge anyone else's sickness with football. I sent you guys my, I don't know if you all use Spotify, you get that year in review. And it told me I'm in the top 0.5% in sports podcast listeners. And really Spotify's just telling me I'm a real loser with no interest. They're like, you need to get a life, dude. So if you go on your smart TV and pull up my YouTube app and you look at what comes up, it's all NFL, all Seahawks stuff. And I'm in no position to judge anyone's sickness. I'm sending you shit at weird hours of the day.
You are.
And the stuff that comes through my brain about the NFL and Seahawks, I get it. So most people would be like, you're crazy. You were down there all day. Find something else to be interested. But I'm probably not your guy for that.
Well, and you guys are my draft bros. And before, I wasn't one of the draft bros. You guys were the original draft bros, and I was like, I don't, whatever. And then now, the past few years, I've gotten obsessed with it. And we're in this zone where people are starting to talk draft, and I kind of find myself pulled toward it. I'm like, wait a second. That's not this season. That's later. That's not now. That's later. But I still can't help myself from posting a little bit about it. I got to tell you one other thing, and I'm curious because I'm really interested. I haven't heard Nathan, especially your take on this game, but I watched the first half. Skipped through a couple of parts, but the two players that jumped out to me, and it wasn't just because they were the best two players to watch, but there were two players that I hadn't thought about as much from this game. One was Laken Tomlinson, which I don't think I've said at any point this year. I was like, he played pretty damn well in that game. And it's uncool to say good things about Laken Tomlinson, so I'm willing to be uncool. The other player was Byron Murphy. And it's the second straight week where Byron Murphy, he looks like a running back at defensive tackle. Like his plays downfield and sideline to sideline at nose tackle, like he's looking, I know the stats aren't necessarily backing it up, but he's looking like he's playing a lot faster and getting involved a lot more in a lot more plays than he was even a few weeks ago. I'm curious, like, Nathan, your thoughts on that, and who stood out to you? Like, who do you, when you think about that game, who are guys that stood out to you?
I actually did think about Laken Tomlinson in that game because the offensive line looked pretty solid in that game. And, the Arizona defense is not, they don't have a lot of world beaters. I think they've played more than the sum of their parts at times, but you're not facing off against Myles Garrett or Aaron Donald or anything like that. I feel like with Lucas coming back and Lamea looking respectable, everything, like, it feels like Tomlinson's maybe just like settled a little bit. Like, maybe, I don't know, I haven't really paid close enough attention to say, like, is he able to get more center help now or what is going on? But like, as those other pieces fell into place, he has just kind of evened out. And I don't know that that's related or not, but I was definitely thinking about it like, they fixed the right side of the line clearly, but like just everything feels a little nicer now. And I don't remember getting real angry at Laken Tomlinson all that much compared to early in the year where it was like, boy, I don't know who's actually worse. Is it him or Bradford? Now I feel pretty confident it's Bradford.
That was like the South Park episode where they're running like a turd versus a shit sandwich for president or something like that to see who is going to win. I think that was the guard situation earlier in the year.
But Tomlinson doesn't feel like that anymore.
It does not. Nice. It does not. Who stood out to you in that game?
It's a good question. I don't know that any. Did you watch? I guess maybe I'm weird about this, or maybe I just haven't thought about it enough. I don't feel like any one player stood out. It felt really complete from a whole, like the whole team played well, and so I don't know. Okay, I'll be honest. Look, the Charbonnet thing was the thing I was watching the whole game. I thought McIntosh played well and stuff, but like Sharps went off, and you kind of got to give him some credit for that. So I guess if there's one thing that I think about, what I'll remember this game for is like, I'm gonna have to deal with the Charbonnet stuff forever now. So Charbonnet stood out for me.
People don't know your Charbonnet takes. You and Derek, remind people why that's a little painful for you.
Well, so we're firmly, running backs don't matter crowd. And they took Sharps in the second round and McIntosh in the sixth round, I believe. And so I've been holding out hope that McIntosh would outperform Charbonnet just to prove the point. And he hasn't done that. But there was a while there where it was looking like, boy, we talked about on the pod, like, how could he be worse? And he wasn't worse in that game, but he didn't get the carries. And so, Charbonnet racked up the total yardage there. So, yeah, there's in the war, the ongoing, it's a bit of a cold war now, but in the ongoing do running backs matter war, that was a loss for the nerds, I think.
Jeff, how about you? I mean, I saw you react when I was talking about Byron Murphy. What were your thoughts there?
If you remember our post-game show Sunday, I went on a bit of a rant about that, and I was glad to hear not only you say that. I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah today, and he had the same take. He's like, he's not putting up the stats because of how good Leo's playing as a pass rusher. But when you watch the guy, he's just blowing shit up. And I went on a rant about that the other day, and everyone's like, I keep reading that like Murphy's a bust or things like that, and I'm like watching this guy, I'm like, he's crushing double teams, he's taking on double teams, he's playing a lot of nose tackle. Yeah, he's not putting up Jared Verse pressure numbers and not Dexter Lawrence or something like that, but like I think he's on a really good track right now, and I think he's made a big difference. And so I was happy to hear that, and I think the guys who really stood out to me was Derek Hall. I think it was one of the best games Derek Hall had. Obviously, Nathan hit the big one there, Charbonnet, but I thought Derek Hall played excellent. I thought he was so physical. The crazy part was he had like one pressure and like the counting stats didn't show up. And I thought Tariq Woolen played really, really well. I thought Woolen was not only his coverage was excellent, I thought his tackling was good. I thought he played with kind of the swagger that hasn't really been there. His head wasn't down when he gave up some passes. Like McBride got him over the middle on one play. But I think the cool part that I said on Sunday, and then I heard Jeremiah say today again, it was and Nathan kind of alluded to this earlier. Watching the defense, it seemed like all 11 were good. And all 11 made plays. And Jeremiah said the first thing, like he watches every game with our lads up to make sure, that's a depth chart website, to make sure he's figuring out who's who. And he was like, you could watch 9 plays in a row and it was by 9 different guys. And like this wasn't a game where like Leo took over. Leo was good, obviously. But we kind of talked about that Sunday, Brian, and you were at the game live. I watched the broadcast. That was my takeaway, that so many of the players, different guys, did different things. And I think that's what Baltimore was last year. There wasn't one guy. It was every level of their defense. And I thought that was the most encouraging part. I thought a couple weeks in a row, they've looked like Baltimore, and the 2 Arizona games especially.
Did you guys see that one Murphy play at the goal line where he started on one side of the line and like almost looked like a glitch in the Matrix, that he all of a sudden was all the way on the other side of the line making a tackle? Like,
yeah, like pancake the dude.
That's not normal. And so like that's such a there were so many traitsy plays from him in this game, and even last week against the Jets, where I'm like, this guy's gonna come forward, and like maybe it'll come. I think it could be coming this season, but I'm so excited about what he's gonna be like. Give him a full off season of working out, coming back. Like I think that guy's gonna be a just fantastic core part of that team for so long. And you're talking about the whole defense. That was the other thing. You talk about Derek Hall. I kind of found myself thinking like, God, this team looks so fast and so physical. It's like a Maserati has mated with a Ford F-150, like whatever that would be. Like the power and the speed at which they play. It's infectious. Like it's so nice to be able to talk about your team and your defense in those kind of terms, and have it be something that lasts against a lot of different teams. And they're going to need it this week. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But there's another topic I got to bring up for you guys. All right. This is an important topic. This is one that Jeff has really wanted to make sure we spend a lot of time on. I asked Mike Macdonald a question at the beginning of his press conference today. Here is that question and his reaction. We got a peek inside Mike Macdonald's closet. How much action green would we see in there?
It's a great question. Not much. It's a good color, though. It's a great color. Just I'm kind of cubic, so it's not very flattering on me.
What do you know?
So that's Mike Macdonald's answer. I then asked DK Metcalf, and this is what he had to say about Action Green. Action Green, is that a jersey that other players want to get in exchange from you, or is that one that they're not?
I would say this about the Action Green. I love them personally, in my opinion, but the big guys hate them. I don't know why. Don't ask me. But no, the opponents. I think our opponents really admire the Action Green jerseys. Hopefully, the Packers wear all white, so it'll be a fun looking game.
What's your favorite uniform combination for
the Action Green. Yeah.
Wait. I think there's more.
The flattering color for the big guys, is that?
Look at you trying to put words in my mouth. No.
All right. Well, so Action Green. It's an Action Green week. Sunday Night Football. The Seahawks are bringing that out. Where do you guys stand on Action Green, Nathan?
I'm not a fan. They're better than
you are
the
a big
first
guy.
one.
You are a big guy. You are a big guy. Maybe that's why.
True. Yeah. When Mike McDonald said he's cubic, the Action Green, I'm picturing like a Minecraft creeper if he wears it. The first ones, like the Aaron Curry one, was awful. Those were the worst. The new ones are better. But yeah, I don't know if it's big guy solidarity or what, but I don't love them.
Jeff.
I'm fully out on those. I do not like them. I don't like also that they're wearing them against the Packers. Like, why are you wearing the greenest jersey you have against the Packers? I don't know. I feel like that's wrong. And I'm not a fan. I know a lot of people like them. I also don't like that they're wearing them on primetime because then all my buddies who like other teams are just going to send me their opinions of them. And I have to listen to it for an hour. Like, they have those amazing, like, the throwbacks are incredible. They did add a white throwback in there instead of the action green. I even like the wolf gray better than the green. I'm fully out.
Oh, that is a bad take. And you're not alone. There's people.
I don't like the
Gray
wolf
was
gray.
like wolf gray is like if you did the laundry and you mix the colors and your whites just come out looking like crap. Like,
Yeah,
they're awful.
it's not good, and I still liked it better. So that's my take.
Well, I got a bunch of video and pictures. I'll have to post it later of the big guys wearing action green in practice today. But there was a conspiracy theory put forward by our very own Josh Cashman that I want to give him credit for, and it is that the reason the Seahawks picked action green for this game is so that Packers jerseys in the stands wouldn't stand out as much. The Packers green would blend in with I think it would be one of the worst color clashes you'll ever see. Packers dark green and Seahawks action green in the stands. What do you guys think? Any chance that was part of the decision-making process?
I feel like that dark green is still going to stick out. I don't know.
I wouldn't put it past him. I mean, it's definitely on their minds about the opposing fans. And this is, people don't know, this is the most expensive seat of the season for variable pricing. So this is going to be a game that a lot of season ticket holders are going to be trying to sell their seats to recoup money for the rest of this, season. But
what are they going for? Do we know the numbers here? Because I was looking into that first Niners game and they were not cheap.
Yes, I will tell you. I'll actually even show you. All right. This is scary. Okay. Let me put it back on screen for you here. So if you want to look, this is the variable pricing chart. And this is, okay, these are the most expensive seats. So most expensive seats, obviously preseason going to be really cheap, right? $182 there, $153.
$182 to go see the preseason Browns.
I was going to say that. It's not that cheap.
God.
So then you go to the 49ers and you're like $886. That's a lot, right? Packers $961
Is that per ticket or per pair?
per ticket.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So like these are the most expensive, but even if you're going for the cheaper seats, they have these $77 seats. I don't know if people really know this. I put this in the article I wrote a while ago, but thanks to Paul Allen, put it in the initiative that funded the stadium that the Seahawks have to always have a certain percentage of their seats priced at the lowest in the NFL. That's the only reason those tickets exist, which is really cool. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, so action green, Packer game. What more could you ask for? Jeff, when you think about this Packers matchup, what comes to mind for you?
I think it's a real measuring stick for the Seahawks. We've seen them play Arizona. We've seen them play the Jets. We've seen them play against the second tier teams. The Packers just are one of the top. They haven't played like it all year. Their schedule's been a little light, but they went toe to toe with the Lions last week. They looked like a tier one team. It's been up and down for them. They played a lot of AFC South, but I think it's a real good measuring stick just for the whole team in general. Especially, obviously, you want to see what the defense does against an offense like that. They're better offense, I think, on paper than the Cardinals are. Maybe not statistically, but Jordan Love's a good quarterback. And then I think offensively, we want to see that's been an interesting defense this year. They have a new coordinator. They have a lot of talent. They spent a lot of first round capital on this defense that there's been a disappointment for years. They have a lot of talent. So I'm very curious to how the offensive line bounces back. I think this is a team right now, if all things stay the same, this is your 3-6 first round matchup. So this is a very good team. There's been a lot of analytics that have come out on like how good the NFC North has been just relative to the rest of the league, and the Packers are right up there. So I just think from a measuring stick, we've seen that the Seahawks keep getting better. I think this is just going to tell us more about both sides of the ball.
Nathan, one of the things that's been going on with the Packers is injuries on the defensive side of the ball. And they've had, I mean, they were down in their last game 2 safeties to where they were playing a special teams guy that had 61 career snaps on defense. 53 of them came in that game. So they were really hurting. But they got some pretty good injury news today. Now, Javon Bullard, one of those safeties, very unlikely to play in this game. But the other one, Evan Williams, practiced today. So he's I don't know if he's out of concussion protocol, but he was in it Monday. He practiced today. That's a pretty good sign that he'll be available. They also got Jair Alexander practicing for the first time in a number of weeks. Romeo Doubs practiced, their wide receiver. Edge Cooper, their rookie linebacker, who's been the best rookie linebacker in the NFL when he was playing. He's been out for a number of weeks. He practiced. And then Luke Musgrave, their tight end, who's a pretty decent tight end as well, opened his 21-day practice window today. Don't know if that means he'll play this week. The potential, the Packers, you're getting the best of what they have to offer.
Yeah, I think it's great. I want to see them go up against a healthy team. Like Jeff said, this is a measuring stick. And the last time that they really had this opportunity was probably the Niners game, the first Niners game, when they were still like mostly healthy and looking like some semblance of what they were supposed to be. Didn't really acquit themselves well there. Time before that, Lions game got completely demolished. So they're getting another chance at it. And yeah, I want to see them go up against what should be one of the best teams in the NFL, definitely one of the best teams in the NFC. And let's really see where this team is. The defense has had this rebound. The offense has looked okay. Gino's cleaned up some mistakes. It'll be nice to have some indication of like, okay, how much of like my heart am I willing to give to this team? Because they come out and they beat a healthy Packer team. Okay, yeah, let's go. Let's run the table. Let's talk about playoff wins. If they come out and it's a repeat of the Lions game, cool. Excited for a playoff game. They'll probably still win the division, but I know I don't need to worry too. Maybe I'll look at a couple extra draft prospects or things like that, right? So yeah, hopefully, we get their best and we can really see what they've got cooking.
Do either of you guys, we'll talk about obviously game predictions later, but do either of you come into this concerned it could be a Bills repeat? That they just will, forget the Lions, at least there was half the team played excellent in that game. The Bills, it was just, you do not belong on the field with this team. You are absolutely unworthy. Do you think that's
a memory hold the Bills game? That was in there too. Yeah. No, I don't think that'll happen. I think the defense, what we've seen from them is real. So could the offense fall apart again? Yeah, maybe. I wouldn't put that past them yet, but I don't think we're going to see them just get completely outclassed and look like a bottom tier team again.
How about you, Jeff?
I'm with Nathan. I think the defense just gives them a floor now that just wasn't there in the Bills game. Their floor with that defense was the way it was at that time was so low because of how bad they were at stopping the run. And that game was that was like the bottom of the barrel of that run defense where it's just like they were lining up and they couldn't do anything. I think the defense, even if they don't look dominant, I think that gives them a floor that just wasn't there at that time. I think the one thing this game could escalate in a way like that, I still think obviously the offensive line, they're capable of looking terrible, but that Bills game especially was like Connor Williams snaps at its worst moments, and there was the one where they snapped it way over their head at the goal line. That had the potential to be a close game with a couple moments done better. Obviously, Gino's capable of some back-breaking turnovers. He's capable of them, but I think if they're going to be a run-the-ball, play-defense kind of team, it's hard to see another Bills game happening. They could lose the game, but I can't see it like that.
Well, it's funny you talk about Geno. I mean, Jordan Love's the guy that started with 8 straight games with an interception this year and has a higher interception rate than Geno by a pretty decent shot. And the difference is that Jordan Love also has like twice the touchdown rate that Geno has had this year. So people kind of forgive some of the picks. When you look at the Packers schedule this year, one thing that kind of jumped out to me is, I'll admit, when I saw the Packers matchup, I'm like, okay, this is legit. Like, this is a really good team. I had so much respect for them coming out of last season, one of the youngest teams in the NFL. I thought they had every reason to believe they could make the Super Bowl based on how they were playing in the playoffs last year. Figured they'd be even better this year. But then when I looked at it, like, they've faced when they faced really good teams, like when they faced the Eagles, when they faced the Vikings, they faced the Lions twice. They're 0-4 in those games. They were all like good games. It wasn't like they weren't, qualified to play, but they lost all 4 of those games. Their best win of the season, maybe it's the Rams. They beat the Rams.
They didn't play well. They didn't play well in that game either.
I mean, the Rams didn't. That was back when the Rams had nobody available to them.
Yeah.
The Cardinals game at home, maybe. But they don't have I couldn't really make the case like this is the signature win for the Packers. How much does that matter to either of you?
Yeah, when your best wins are one of the NFC West teams, probably not the Niners, but they absolutely demolished. That's not great. It's not super good. I don't know. I mean, I'm a person that. Look, these games are all super close, right? I value head coaches that go to a lot of conference championship games and can go to a lot of Super Bowls, and I'm not going to worry if you're not winning a lot of those because when you it's single elimination and stuff like that, right? And all of the really good teams that they've played and lost to, they played them super duper close. So, you kind of look at it. I think there's probably a couple breaks that can go the other way, and we're looking at this team in a very different light, even though they maybe basically played the same way. I guess with the exception of that first Lions game when they got beat pretty good. So I don't knock them too much for playing some of the best teams really closely and just coming up a little short.
Yeah. Part of what I was also curious about when I was doing my deep dive, tail of the tape up at hawkblogger.com is they're super turnover. They are a turnover narrative, their team. They were turning it over a lot on offense for a while. Jordan Love was throwing a bunch of picks. But then they were also taking the ball away a ton to start the year. Xavier McKinney started the year with 5 games with interception. They had at least 2 picks in every game in the first 7 games or 6 games, I think it was. 3 takeaways in at least 5 of those games. And so one of the things is if you look at their EPA per play defensively, it looks pretty good, but that's partially because of those turnovers. If you look at their success rate, the drop back success rate, do you guys want to guess where they rank in drop back success rate out of 32 teams?
7th.
It's a good guess. Jeff, you have a feel?
I'm going to go low. I'm going to go 22.
It's a good guess as well. You're both too high. They're 32nd. They're dead last in the NFL in drop back success rate. So what that tells me is this has been a passing defense that has really made their season off of turnovers. That's not a reliable way to live.
No, it's like the Tim Ruskell Seahawks teams. They're kind of like that.
Say more. What do you mean?
Well, those Tim Ruskell defenses were very turnover heavy. They were kind of flawed. They had a lot of Lofa Tatupu interceptions, Deion Grant, guys like that. And they kind of masked a lot of issues that we're having on the defense. And so the turnovers would make them look a lot better and they would keep the games a little closer. But we always saw those playoff games. A lot of the time the issues would come to a head. I remember that time they played Brett Favre and the Packers in the playoffs, for example. So they just got completely boat raced. So I don't know. Turnover heavy with allowing bad success rate, that's not a great recipe for a playoff team.
Could be a decent recipe. I hate to just crap on Geno because I love Geno, but dude's turned the ball over a bit this year. So let's put this team to the test. Let's put Geno to the test. Let's see if he can, get out of this game without any turnovers.
Big game for him.
I think with the point you're making, I think I hear you is, well, okay, the Packers have lived by the turnover, but Geno's certainly given them plenty of those. So let's not assume that's not going to happen in this game, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Geno has totally died by turnovers. Yeah.
Did you guys notice a difference in that last game against Arizona and how he played?
Yeah.
This is another thing I found this morning was he ranked about 14th in the NFL in check down rate. Around 13.5% of his throws were check downs coming into that game or over the course of the year. 30% check downs in that game against Arizona. And the reason I think that's a good thing is exactly what you're saying, Nathan. They're facing a lot of zone. It's not really conducive to trying to attack it super downfield. And what did we see? We saw, I thought, like a pretty competent screen game. Mm-hmm. I think we saw a decent amount of like taking throws to Noah Fant and yards after the catch. Like that, if he can feel like success that way and start taking those, I feel like that's a pretty important step for this offense.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, again, to go back to like, who I said was the standout there, if they can run the ball, that is a whole nother element as well. And a lot of that is because it's probably speaking to what the offensive line is capable of. But if they can run the ball better, they don't have to run it like they did, last week, but if they can run the ball better, if Geno can play a little safe with the ball, we'll see what this defense looks like against this Packers offense. I mean, I think they probably had some confidence, especially after that first Cardinals game, that they were going to be able to shut down the Cardinals offense, and that certainly proved to be true. So I don't know that you can beat a good Packers team by just playing the check down game and playing it safe. Which, look, Geno is not afraid to try to make plays, obviously. So I think the math will have to be a little different on like that check down percent and some of that. But if they can run the ball and just, again, like all the 3rd and 9s and 3rd and 15s and those stuff is where they really die, right? So if they can just play a little, like they can create those better situations, I think it's it's obviously a huge improvement for the offense.
Yeah, and to add to that, when I was watching the Packers-Lions game last week, the thing that really jumped out to me was the Packers' run defense was really good. Like both their running backs were under 3.5 a carry. And I haven't seen a lot of run defenses this year watching the Lions every week, which I have, give them that much trouble in the run game. Both of them were under 60 yards total, I think under 3.5 carries, I think with 15 each. And I just pulled up the Dolphins game the week before, Raheem Mostert, 5 for 19, A-Chain, 7 for 14. So that's 2 weeks in a row. There's a team coming off 10 days rest that's played really good run defense. Mm-hmm. The Seahawks just had their best run offense game of the year. And when we saw what it did to the rest of the offense, how much more repeatable it felt, it allowed the check down game. I think this is a really interesting matchup because I read a stat today that the Packers, I think, are the worst team in the league, are 31st in defending the slot receiver. And Seahawks have the league's leading slot receiver, who I was told was a bust a month ago.
He's disappointing, Jeff. He's disappointing.
So if they're like Nathan said, if you're forcing Geno to be 3rd and 9, that's a recipe for trouble. But if they can run the ball and then execute that slot game, because that run defense has been really good. I think this is just a really interesting matchup.
I think you're totally right. One of the things that I don't know. What I like about this run offense, not that it was just productive in this last game, but the style that they're choosing to play with those pullers, even if you stop the Seahawks for not a lot of gain, you're going to feel it. Like, that's the type of scheme that if you do that and you keep doing that, it's kind of like that Marshawn interviews, run through their face over and over. And if you just keep doing that, I don't care who you are. That is something that's going to wear on you. I'm curious. It's supposed to be potentially a rainy day, or rainy Sunday. I can't decide who I think that helps. Do you guys have a feel for who might benefit from bad weather in this game?
I mean, I see the Seahawks as the underdog here. So anything that levels the playing field, I think benefits Seattle.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I would have said that's probably the worst thing for the Seahawks based on their attempts to run the ball. But the Packers really can spread the ball around. Jordan Love's numbers are down this year. He's turning the ball over a lot, but they're really they rely on big plays like Christian Watson, Jaden Reed over the middle, Tucker Kraft. If they're forced to beat Josh Jacobs, and Josh Jacobs has scored a lot of touchdowns, but his success rate and his productivity aren't like super efficient. Like he's like 19 for 63 most weeks with 2 touchdowns. They're not a super efficient running the ball team. They like to spread. Weird thing is LaFleur and McDonald have never played against each other as coordinators or as head coaches now. They missed each other in a bunch of spots. So that's a really interesting matchup. He's done really well against that tree, but never him. So a couple weeks ago, I would have said Packers all the way. But the last 2 weeks, what I've seen from their run offense, I think it might be the Seahawks that benefit.
Who do you think's got the advantage when they don't have a lot of reps against each other as a OC versus DC? Is that something that you think LaFleur gets an advantage from that? Do you think that McDonald gets an advantage from that? Curious how you guys think about it. Nathan, you got a thought?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think because, I mean, in this specific case, I think McDonald has the advantage because he's played against McVay and other, like other offenses in this tree. And so while he hasn't played against LaFleur, I think he knows the deal. I'm sure LaFleur has played against, I mean, like McDonald's not like reinventing the wheel here. So, it's not that McDonald's going to have completely new things that LaFleur's never experienced before. But it feels like ultimately, like it's a good, like that scenario is just a good test to see who the better coach is, right? You haven't actually gone up against each other. There's no shortage of tape on these guys at this point. So they'll be able to do, study and feel out those tendencies and, how they can sequence their play calls and whatnot, and how they can intuit what's going to happen in, critical situations. I don't know who I think is going to come away with the edge here. And it's also hard too, because there's probably, there's a talent disadvantage here. I think that these teams are not totally equal in that respect. But yeah, it feels like a good test of 2 coaches.
What do you think, Jeff?
It's a hard one to have a strong take on because, like Nathan said, LaFleur hasn't played McDonald, but he played Miami 2 weeks ago, which is Anthony Weaver. I believe they played Tennessee, which is another McDonald guy, but it's sort of like there's difference between McDonald and his I don't know, this tree members. I don't know what the word is, but
Disciples,
that's the word. So I think McDonald, just his ability to take down an offensive scheme is unique relative to what the other 2 guys can do or the other 4 guys can do. So I don't really know. Like what LaFleur did to Dan Quinn in the playoffs, he essentially pantsed them and turned the whole Seahawks fan base against him, basically. He's done that to coaches before, but they run a very simple scheme, and LaFleur's done really, really well. Even when like Malik Willis, who I thought was just terrible when I watched him in the preseason this year, they won a bunch of games with Malik Willis. So it's hard not to think LaFleur kind of has the advantage just because I've seen him do it year after year after year. But my God, like my level of like respect and command for Mike McDonald and what he's been able to do to these offenses, it's hard not to say him. So I don't really have a gut feel on that. I don't really know.
I think it's one of the most. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nathan.
Oh, I was just saying, I would be surprised if we walk away from this game feeling one coach pants the other. Like we could argue about who won or whatever, but I don't think either of these coaches are going to absolutely get one over on the other one.
Agreed.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's going to be the story of the game to some degree is that matchup, like on a number of levels. And there's part of me that's like, when McDonald faced Mike McDaniel the first time, he did get owned and then he adjusted and he's kind of owned him since. Yes, Mike McDonald's done well against the Shanahan and the McVay, Shanahan tree. And then last time he like last time the Rams were in Seattle, people forget about this. They had 7 3-and-outs, which was only happened once in 115 games prior for McVay as a head coach. Like, he owned him. And so maybe he'd have this figured out. But I think LaFleur is different than those guys. I don't think he's just like a Shanahan copy or a McVay copy. I think he's his own guy. And McDonald said the same thing today when asked about it. So I have a ton of respect for LaFleur as a coach overall and as an OC, as a play caller. And I'm fascinated. I mean, I'm really fascinated. I mentioned earlier this morning about this. The Packers are the number one team early down run rate. Like, they, by long stretch, will run the ball early downs. They're also the number one efficiency team, both pass and rush on early downs. Like, they are an early down beast. The Seahawks, since week 9, when we've seen this new defense, number one early down defense in the NFL by EPA per play. So, like, I asked McDonald about that today. I'm going to share some more about that later this week, but early downs are going to be where we really see these two guys go at it. And I don't know. Like, I don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. It's hard for me to feel anything but confident about the way the Seahawks defense is played. Like, there haven't been a lot of things teams have been able to do to address what the Seahawks have been doing to them physically, not even just schematically. Let's get a couple of these super chats, and then Nathan will head over to patron questions. So Troy says, hello from the Philippines. Hello, Troy. We may see one of these next two teams in the playoffs. Do you think Mike Macdonald game planning is affected at all by that thought? I don't think so. And he's been pretty clear that there's one thing he said where he was asked about the Arizona game. Do you hold anything back knowing you're playing them in 2 weeks? And he said, I don't think that's fair to the team. I coach every single game. There's another he was asked about. I think there was where they played the Bengals last game of the season and then the first game of the playoffs or something like that. Something, I don't know which team it was. He's like, I call it fully every single game. So I don't think so. Noah Berman says 3 live streams in a day. Brian, we can't thank you enough for your hard work. It's so cool to see fans' energy about the Seahawks, this defense, and our OC. That is nice of you to say, Noah. Thanks for being a member for 8 months, man. Amazing. Really, really appreciate it. Lance Johnson has gifted a Hawk Blogger membership to the channel. Thank you, Lance, for doing that. Alvinish has gifted 10 Hawk Blogger memberships and become a member himself. I love it. Hopefully, people are paying this forward. If you get one of these free memberships, consider giving one. That's part of what we try to do in this community. And speaking of giving, patreon.com/hawkblogger. You sign up there, you get access to to the Slack channel where you can ask us questions each and every week. And Nathan, what do we have this week?
I'm going to give this first one to you, Brian, because this feels like you always have these little pet fantasies about moving offensive alignment around, I feel like. So Braxton wants to know, with the coaching staff seemingly not high on Christian Haynes at right guard, do you think a change of position to center might be in the cards? Played some center at the Senior Bowl, which I did not know.
I don't think so. I think it's a great question, but I think Olu has played well enough to be promising. I think he's not perfect, but I have a feeling they might be okay at center. What do you guys think? How are you? I mean, he's had some not so good and some good stuff. Are you feeling okay with Olu at center?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I don't think there's anything super exciting there.
If I told you right now that they're going to go into next year with him as their starting center and they made no other moves, how would you feel?
I would be disappointed. Like, I don't think he should be handed the job. And I think they should be ready for him to, like, I don't know. If we just say, hey, we're going into next year and Olu's a starter, that's fine. But if you're saying, like, it's just he's being crowned, in the offseason and that's the deal, like, that doesn't feel great to me.
Jeff, you feel any different?
More or less the same. Like, he's a physically limited player, but I think he's competent in terms of like calling line, like adjustments, like running the offense. Like, he come in and like he stabilized their snapping, and I think like if they upgrade the positions around him, I think you can totally be fine with him. So I wouldn't be like devastated or anything like that. I'm not saying like this is a must add, like I've said about center for the last feels like 10 years. I think we just talked about Tomlinson, but I really think left guard is a spot they really need to upgrade. Obviously, they're going to need better depth at right tackle. I don't know what's going on with George Fan again, but I don't think they're in there. I'm not going to be sitting there pounding the table for centers like I have. But again, I think I don't know what Jalen Sundell's potential is. I don't know what's going on, but I don't think, again, he's just that position goes untouched. But on my list of organizational rankings, center's not very high right now, and that's okay.
That's where I am.
Lakin's on a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal?
Yeah, 1 year
deal.
Yeah. So I think having Haynes be in the mix at the guard spot, maybe on the other side of the line, makes more sense than trying to move him to center and see if he can compete with Olu. Okay, Colin L. has a draft question for Jeff. The Giants or the Raiders will draft Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward 1-2. Other than Tennessee, no other teams with glaring quarterback needs before Seahawks picks. First of all, I'm kind of curious to think if you think that's how that's going to go, but could Seattle pull the trigger on Drew Aller?
In the first round?
Yep.
I'm pretty shocked. There's some people who've been writing me about Drew Aller, DMing me all year. Like they think this is a John Schneider guy. Like he got a lot of the physical tools of like the Josh Allen mold. He's obviously a different player. He hasn't played great in big games. He played well last game, but they ultimately didn't win. I don't see him as a first round pick
to end the game.
Exactly. I don't see him. I've been watching him all year. I don't see him as a first round player. I think that would be a mistake to take him in the first round. I see him as a second round quarterback. And I've talked about second round quarterbacks a lot when I talk about second round defensive ends. It is not a position historically that has worked. It is typically a big roll of the dice. They're usually flawed. If you're a quarterback, you're going in the second round, there's usually a pretty big flaw in your game. So I'd be shocked if Drew Aller is the first round quarterback for them. I can see Schneider liking him. Mm-hmm. I don't know enough about his personality, and I haven't really watched him before this year, but round one, that would shock me.
Let me ask you a spicy related question. Do you think it's more likely that the Seahawks draft a rookie quarterback high, first 2 or 3 rounds, let's call it, or that they trade Geno and go after Sam Darnold?
I don't know, man. That's a gross. Why, though? Why Sam Darnold?
How different is he than Geno? 8 years younger, more mobile.
There's starting to be like a corner of the internet that's starting to build this case for Darnold, where Florio put out an article today, and I've kind of noticed this too. I talked about this on our show the other day. If you really look at like the draft order right now, there's not a lot of teams that need quarterbacks. A lot of the quarterback positions have stabilized. Like Bryce Young's become pretty good. Will Levis has played to the point where maybe they keep him there. And then if those quarterbacks get overdrafted 1 and 2, there's Sam Darnold. Like if I'm the Raiders and you have to decide between Sam Darnold and Travis Hunter or just Shedeur Sanders, I'd probably go with Darnold and Hunter. But if they go Sanders, which they probably will because their owner's a nut, it doesn't leave much for Darnold. And there's a corner of the Seahawks market being like, okay, Geno's going to want $45 million. You could get this guy for $30 million. The Baker Mayfield contract, who's 8 years younger. He's played well.
None of this is adding up to me because if Darnold can't get more than 30, why is Geno getting 45? If Darnold doesn't have a market in free agency, what are you trading Geno for? I don't think
that's the kind of take I keep saying. I'm like, well, if Geno is going to get, who's trading for Geno? And are you just cutting him? Like, I kind of see the point where, like, I hate to say this because Geno does deserve more money, but like, the Seahawks have more leverage. He's having like Brady Henderson's like he has 13 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. Like, don't really have a case to get $50 million or whatever. So,
you know the funniest thing? Sorry to interrupt, Jeff. The funniest thing is the team that probably would best make sense for either Geno Smith or Sam Darnold, the New York Jets.
Well, that's the funny part because I was going through it, and the one team I identified as the team who needs quarterback is the Jets because they don't draft high enough, and the other guys are going to go. and it's pretty hard sell. You know, we got our quarterback, guys. It's Sam Darnold or Geno's washed out of there. So
You know the other team that could be after a quarterback? Sorry, we're getting way off topic. We should get back
Rams.
to Patriot questions. The Rams.
that's the team
Rams.
I've identified for Darnold. Yeah.
I could absolutely see that marriage.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Why wouldn't the Vikings just? Oh, Vikings have
Well, it's
JJ
interesting
McCarthy.
because if you're the Vikings, do you just hand the team over to JJ McCarthy?
I think they do.
I know. It's like I'd re-sign Darnold. Like,
Well, keep in mind, Kirk Cousins certainly is going to be available as well. I know. Talk about it. Rough streak. What is it like? How many games? 0 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. I mean, people get upset with Geno for good reason. He hasn't had a stretch like that. Yikes.
he looks really cooked, man.
All right, sorry. Let's get back to Patriot questions.
weird. Yeah, this is fast. Wait. I want to touch on is Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward going 1-2? That's not a real thing, right?
That is a real thing.
It was in the mock
This
draft.
draft is shit.
It's
I know,
shit.
but that doesn't mean that you just like dive mouth first into it. Like
You shouldn't. But the Raiders and Giants are run by some very unique owners and who are have desperate fan bases who need answers at quarterback.
All right. I think
It's not good.
Cam
It's
Ward-
not good.
I was like, I was really high on Cam Ward last year relative to most people. I've got receipts to prove it. I thought he was an end of the first round pick potentially if he had gone through the whole process last year. I still think that. And he in this draft was in conversation for number 1 overall and probably is going to go in the top 2. That's the state of this draft compared to last year in terms
is
of
the whole draft terrible? I have not been that.
It's
up
not
on it.
terrible. It's really like bottom heavy or middle heavy. It's just there's a lot of good edge rushers. There's a lot of good interior linemen. There's I think some decent corners, that kind of thing, good tackles. But there's not the star power. There's not like the franchise changers.
There's probably 2 blue chips. One is a running back, so that's not good. And the other blue chip is Travis Hunter. And then other than that, if you like go into a mock draft and like look at the top 10, like by pick 7, you're like, hey. So there's
Genty is like the Brock Bowers of this class. Clear blue chip, could potentially be a Hall of Fame player, low value position, like probably be available outside the top 10, maybe even. It's weird. Like some of the he could ultimately be the best player in this draft and go outside the top 10.
for good reason.
Holy shit, he's lame.
Yeah, for good reason.
Okay. All right. Next question. Keeper54 wants to know. First of all, he says he's a big fan of the show. Thank you very much. I assume he. The last home game. Is anyone going to the last home game against the Vikings?
I go to every home game.
I guess. Yeah. I guess Jeff, you're probably not going to be there.
No, for many reasons.
Yeah. So all right.
Evan was threatening to buy a ticket last minute to come to this Packers game. We'll see if he does that. I think probably not.
There you go. All right. And then Sam Brown wants to know, I guess, Jeff, I'll send this one to you. Do you have any expectations for Jalen Darden going forward?
No. My only expectation is him not fumbling the ball. And the first kickoff of the game, it looked like he hit the ground first, but it was almost a fumble.
Did you see the I saw when I saw it in real time, I was like, oh man, but like he was down cradling the ball for like a good beat or two, and then a guy comes in with his like elbow. Like that was not a bad
No, it was just like they
play.
just scored a touchdown, and then all you saw in the like TV copy was them scrambling for the ball, and you're like,
yeah,
not again. But no, honestly, one of my good buddies is like a hardcore. He's like the equivalent of me as a Bucks fan. And I asked him about Darden. He's like, he's a very low upside guy. He does not fumble the ball. He'll very rarely have an exciting return. And he's a very boring player. But that, relative to D. Williams, that's fine.
who got claimed by the Giants. That was wild.
So about the Giants, we need to talk about one thing. Are you at all concerned with John Schneider? Have you watched Drew Lock at
Always,
all?
constantly.
No.
Yeah. Have you watched Drew Lock at all?
Yeah.
No, I'm saying bring him back. He is so freaking bad.
I know.
The fact that this guy loved Drew Lock, I'm like, oh my God.
He loved him
is
enough to have
awful.
like a campaign. Like he got Mike McDonald talking about Drew Lock. He got Ryan Grubb talking about Drew Lock. He was doing everything he could to bring that guy back.
He's one of the worst
And then-
quarterbacks in the league.
And then he was like leaking information about, well, they brought him in there to be the starter. We couldn't compete with that. Like he was sabotaging, torpedoing the Giants.
I'm a little worried about that.
Drew Lock.
Well, there's other things to worry about there. There's some rumors that Deebo Samuel will be on his way to Seattle next year because Schneider is a big fan of his. That would be such a bad move. I would not be a fan. All right, go on.
I can appreciate John's love of like meathead, throw the ball over those mountain quarterbacks. Like, I don't want that as a quality in my GM, but I get it from a just enjoyment of stupid football. So
yeah,
I can relate to him on that.
It's the best answer I could have asked for.
Yes.
All right, Chris Bailey. We talked about this, but Chris Bailey wants to know, why did the utilization of checkdowns and quick short passes to tight ends and running backs take so long to incorporate into the offense? Do you expect it to be utilized against Green Bay? Or is it something specific to what they saw in Arizona? I guess, Brian, why don't you take this one?
I think it's accumulation of playing zone defenses at the highest rate of any offense in the NFL for the last 6 weeks. And they've seen that, Geno especially has seen that trying to push it downfield, trying to be stubborn about that. He's tried over and over and over again. And I think he found some gold in this game not doing that. And I think that the offensive line, that was maybe the most jarring thing of this game. Everyone talks about the run game, but watching Geno make a read and then shift his body to make the second read and shift it to make the third read, it felt foreign. Like, I could not remember the last time I saw him do that without someone barreling down on his soul. And so he also had time to get to his checkdowns in this game. So I think the offensive line is another piece.
And this has been something that we've seen from them early in the year. Like, I remember talking about this on one of the podcasts about the offense feeling disjointed. And one of the things that was actually working was the quick passing game. So I don't know. It feels like they were able to tap back into something that they had, been able to do earlier on too.
Agreed.
Severin Alex wants to know, we seem to be expecting Lockett to be gone next season. If so, what type of receiver do we want to fill his role? It feels like JSN could take a lot of Tyler's work. I think JSN has already taken most of Tyler's work. And DK does what DK does. I'm partial to a big body tight end that can box out in the red zone. I think we already talked about it, right? It's Deebo Samuel. Jeff, what do you want to see him do if Lockett's gone next year?
Yeah, I think a big body receiver that I was actually DMing with Griff the other day, kind of asking him about DK and things like that, and he was just like, "Dude, we need a tight end, like a dude like McBride or something, and that would open up." So I think like a red zone weapon, because DK, as big as he is, like we've talked about, doesn't play to his size. The contested catches thing has been a thing. I think like a red zone big bodied receiver would be a very good asset that this team just doesn't have right now.
It's funny. For me, it's all about speed.
Yeah.
I think they absolutely need someone who can threaten the deep part of the field, because when DK is not available or whatever, there's nobody. Like, it becomes a very pedestrian, speed group. So, yeah.
That's hard to argue.
I would take someone big or fast. I mean,
it's like, what?
Yeah, sorry.
I think just a good receiver. I don't know that I agree. I'm partial to speed. But like, I don't think it needs to be, there's different ways you could go about like accentuating different skill sets, but just get someone that's good. Like, not to pick on Tommy here in the chat, but Tommy says we need a Pickens. I feel like that's actually exactly what they don't need. Like, don't get the one trick pony type receiver. Like, get somebody. I guess my type is I would like to see them get a professional receiver that's good at something that they can accentuate. I think there's different, like, I think a big body would make sense. I think speed would be cool. But I think just getting somebody that can be good consistently and help, like, from that perspective, I think is the biggest thing for them.
Actually, I'm doing something really quick. So wide receivers drafted in 2024. Okay. Oh, 2024 picks. Let me pull this up. Okay. Positions.
Yeah, star performer gets it. Just get another Justin Jefferson.
Yeah. Darn it. This is taking longer than I wanted to. 1 second. Give me a second. Is this going to do it for me? All right. So, top, we're not going to talk about Neighbors and Odunze and all those guys. Adonai Mitchell, Brian Thomas, Troy Franklin, Lad McConkey. Not a super fast guy. If you got me Lad McConkey, I would be happy. I think that's the kind of guy you're talking about, Nathan, who's just a good receiver, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I do like Brian Thomas, though, too.
Brian Thomas is really good. Like,
Yeah.
Keon Coleman, he's fine. Not so much Ricky Pearsall.
He's not that good.
But yeah, like, I think there's guys to be had. Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan.
They haven't played very well.
No, I still think I still believe, especially in Polk. I think he's going to be a fine player. But there's those guys to be had every year, for sure. All right, do we have any other Patreon questions?
That is it for Patreon.
All right. Patreon.com/Hawkblogger. You too can ask us questions each and every week. Thank you for being a supporter at Patreon. Thanks for everyone that's asking. Thanks, Nathan, for asking us questions. A couple quick super chats, then we'll get into our predictions talking about this game. Simon Miller says, I need to put my money where my mouth is. Brian, your audio, video, and overall production tonight is good. Nice work. Okay. Thanks, Simon. That's nice of you. I don't know what's different. I admit I did a little interview with Alyssa Charleston Smith today, and I'm like, please don't stand next to me because you are 7 feet tall and because I look like I look and you look like you look. It's not fair. Like, everyone's going to be like, what kind of troll is on this interview? Why did they pick this Oompa Loompa to do this? So very nice of you to lift me up my spirits with that, Simon. So thank you. Eric Kinnaman says, Eric Kinnaman becomes a new member. 12-foot chain becomes a new member. So we're getting a lot of new people in the community, which is really cool. Love seeing it.
There's one more here.
Just
a late
new one. Any regrets on Spoon over Carter? I hate this friggin' sorry. Thank you for the super chat. It is a common question. I hate this question. This question because I don't want to think about it. Mainly,
I think that means yes.
No, I don't have any regrets about it. Every one of us were live and we wanted them to take Jalen Carter, not because we thought he was the best, better than player, but that type of player is much harder to find. And unfortunately, he continues to play really well. So I think that we were all right in that capacity. Is there a single second that I regret having Devin Witherspoon on this team? No, I love having Devin Witherspoon on this team. So that's kind of what I hate. I don't know if there's even an answer to this question that is actually a solid take as opposed to just equivocation like I just did.
Yeah, it's one of those where I feel like we just need to be okay holding two things in our head at the same time. Witherspoon is very good. Jalen Carter is very good. They're awesome football players. I would be happy to have Carter on this team. I'm ecstatic to have Spoon on this team. And what is it? Comparison is the thief of joy. Maybe that's kind of getting to the root of why you hate this question. And I do get that. Maybe just let's just be happy with how it worked because it worked good. And move on.
All right. We've got one more super chat. I'm going to read this, but we're not going to get too far into it because we got to get to the game and we're going to do a lot more draft stuff later. Draft is not now. So Ian C says, how do you feel about drafting T-Mac, wide receiver, Arizona? Don't even know who that is. That's my answer.
If it's the guy I'm thinking of, they have zero chance of getting him even if the Seahawks lost every game the rest of the year.
Tataroa McMillian.
Yeah, he's a top 10 player.
I have not seen him. I'm willing to admit that. And
the thing is, like, the Seahawks don't need like a target hog in their offense. They got JSN, assume DK's back next year. They just need a complimentary player. McMillan's a top 10 dude in this draft. So he's going to be he projects as like a number 1 or 2. So I don't think that's the receiver they need. The McConkey, for example, has been a complimentary guy. I think that would be him and JSN, kind of odd mix there, but like, I'm not saying him specifically, but they don't need that top 10. I don't think that's what makes a great team, having all these top 10 receivers that demand the ball. I think you need complements that work off each other.
All right. Before we get into predictions, give me the top few matchups that you're looking at that you think are going to decide this game between the Packers and the Seahawks. Nathan, you go first. What are the matchups in this game? Set aside the coaching stuff we've already talked about. Player-wise, what are the matchups that are on your mind?
I think it feels so boring to say. I'm trying to think of something more interesting, but like Geno versus the pass defense, just seeing him play another clean game, seeing him, if he can play at the level we know he can play, then they will look, every bit a worthy team to take on this Packers team. But if we see warts again and, and just your team typically goes with your quarterback. So it's hard for me not to say, I think the biggest thing that is being tested in this game is the offense, and specifically Geno. I think I really want him. Somebody said earlier, this is the game where Geno gets the national respect that he deserves. And I feel like every game we've gone into with that attitude, he's completely crapped the bed.
Not the Lions game.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. So I don't know. I want to see him do it. And I want to see him do it. I feel bad because I'm so skeptical of Geno at this point, but I really want to see him do it. I think he can do it. I know he has it in him. Just please, dude, be the dude for this game in this big, it's a big game. It's a big moment. Get it,
Jeff.
I think that's a hard answer to not go with, especially with Xavier McKinney and what he's done for that defense. But I'm going to go a different way. I'm going to say the run offense against that Green Bay defense. I alluded to that earlier. I thought what they did to Detroit and just how ferocious they were defending that Detroit run, which has been excellent. That really jumped off the page to me. And obviously seeing the Seahawks finally show semblance of a run offense. And then the second half, I know our buddy Cashman was like, well, they sucked again in the second half. So if it's the second half run offense or the offense we saw with the Jets, it's going to be a really hard game to win. If they're in 3rd and 8, and Ben Solak put that stat earlier the year that how much they were in 3rd and 8 and longer. If it's that game, I think it's going to be a really hard game. So for me, I think if the Seahawks can run the ball again, and we see LaMea and we see some of these guys, Lucas and Tomlinson, these guys have a good game against what looks like a very good run defense. They have a lot of talented defensive linemen. They have good linebackers. I think that can open up parts of their offense that we saw. They could have chunk plays. I think that's what makes the game winnable for Seattle.
I love that. If you're asking me one player that I think is how he plays and how the Seahawks play against him is going to be a deciding factor, it's Kenny Clark. I think Kenny Clark's a huge part of how this game goes one way or another. And for a lot of the reasons you're talking about, Jeff, but I think he can be a factor in a lot of things in this game. And a month ago, the idea of a really solid interior defensive lineman is just chalk it up. We're screwed. I don't feel that way at this point. And I'm really curious to see that. And last thing I'll ask before we get into the predictions, we can all name guys that we're okay, this is the guy we're worried about on the Packers, Jordan Love or Josh Jacobs or, pick your favorite Packers receiver or tight end or whatever. Tucker Kraft is even a guy, right? So who do you think that when Packers fans and coaches look at on the Seahawks, they're like, man, how are we going to deal with that guy?
It's got to be DK, right?
Really? That's where you go first. I think that's a fair one. That's interesting. Why?
Him and K9 are the ones that can create the most explosive plays and the most explosive of plays, right? And so I think, the last thing that you can do is let DK get away from you, go off, right? And so I think if I was a coach, I would start from, okay, we have to cap this guy. Like, he can't blow the top off this defense. And then how do we fit the rest of it around it? That was going to be number 2 for me for sure. I think, to me, I think it's DK.
For people that are listening and not watching, someone said Laken Tomlinson. It's legitimately funny. Jeff, how about you? Who do you think Packers fans are worried about facing on the Seahawks?
Leonard Williams. I think Leonard Williams has been
top of my list too.
I think he's been the most disruptive player on the Seahawks. I think he's played. Honestly, I think the way he's played in the last month, and Pittsburgh's. I know they put it there defensively, but I think there's a case right now for Leonard to be Defensive Player of the Year, and I don't think he'll win it. I don't think he's played at that level for long enough, but I think he's played at the level that would warrant it, which for a Seahawks fan is unbelievable. I think the other one would be JSN because of how much trouble they've had defending the slot, and that's been a big issue for them. I know they got some guys coming back. DK, when he's healthy, is him for sure. It's been hard to watch DK kind of lumbering around. And every coordinator would say and a lot of people think that a lot of the reason that JSN's played so well is because of the coverage shifts because of DK. So DK just being there is a big deal. But he's not right. I don't know if he's getting healthier. I don't know if you talked about it today, Brian, but he doesn't have the deep speed right now. He's lumbering around a little bit. The separation doesn't look right, but my God, when he's right, it's absolutely him.
Yeah. I think those are all good call outs. I definitely, my mind goes to the defensive line right now. I think any team that watches the Seahawks defensive line play is like, okay, so how do we deal with all of these guys? You mentioned Derek Hall. I think Derek Hall had an outstanding game. I think Mafe had a very good game. I think there's a couple plays I thought Roy Robertson Harris tossed ragdoll a guy like he seems to do every game. Draymond Jones had some some good plays. Uchenna Nwosu got back and now will be even a little bit more into this game. And then you got Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight. There's a lot of guys to kind of deal with and have a plan for. I think if I look at who the Packers have played defensively, the Lions.
Ooh, they were not healthy in that game. They were
playing healthy. They were missing so many guys. The Bears are they're bad now. They're decent, but have they played a defense that's as good as the Seahawks?
No, it's mostly bad defenses.
They played Jason Carter and the Eagles.
They did. That was in a really weird game, that field in Brazil. I can take from that first game of the year, but
not really the Vikings game where they were getting killed the whole time and they came back at the end. But
yeah, Vikings. That's a good one. That was probably the one that's the most relevant.
And it was 28-7 at halftime.
Yeah,
for the Vikings. Yeah.
Oh, I'm curious. All right, let's get into predictions. Nathan, you go first. Who's going to win this game? What's going to be the final score?
I am going to go with Seattle winning it. And I think it's going to be 23-21 Seahawks.
Jeff.
I want to pick Seattle, but I'm going to take the Packers. I think it's going to be a very close game. I just think both sides of the ball, they're a little further along than Seattle is. I think Seattle's offensively, they're still growing. I think this is a game where they're in it. I don't think it's a blowout. I don't think the Bills game I say 24-20 Green Bay.
You know, I can see a lot of different eventualities or outcomes for this game, and the ones that are most positive for the Packers are the fact that I have a lot of respect for Matt LaFleur, and I can imagine him coming in with just a good game plan and making some just good calls that catch him at the right time, and that kind of makes some sense to me. But here's the thing. I like the way the Seahawks offense, like the trajectory of what's going on. And it's not just the last game. The last few games, I like what's coming together for how they're blocking, how they're playing. I like the offensive line. I said that. I mean it. I don't think it's the best offensive line, but I like what I'm seeing. And I can't remember the last time I could genuinely say that about the Seahawks offensive line. I like the way Geno Smith is playing. I like Ryan Grubbs starting to understand what he can and can't accomplish in the NFL. And I think this defense is not flawless, but it is faultless. Like there's not a clear weak spot to be really hammering on week in, week out. And I think that they're going to be playing Sunday Night Football in front of a crowd. And guess what? Almost no one on the Packers has ever played in Lumen Field. Jordan Love's never played there. Matt LaFleur's never played there. Josh Jacobs has. That was not a good experience. But like that's a very young team. Most of them have never played and experienced that. I think they're hitting a buzzsaw. I think the Seahawks are peaking. And I think that they're catching the Packers even at a decent time, even if they get healthy. I got the Seahawks winning this game. And I think the Seahawks are going to win this game. I'm going to give the Seahawks this game 27-14. So I'll give the Seahawks a sizable win in this one. I'm really looking forward to it. And let's hope that doesn't look foolish come Sunday night. So with that, thank you to Nathan Ernst at NathanE11. You can find him on Blue Sky primarily, I think, at these days. Jeff Simmons at Real Jeff Simmons. He's all over the place. You can find him there. I'm Brian Nemaz. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, blah, 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 ad hoc blogger. And tomorrow, I'm really looking forward to it. Sheila Kapati and I finally found some time to talk. 10 a.m. tomorrow, Pacific time. Sheila and I are going to talk because Sheila Kapadia, he predicted the future about the Seahawks when nobody else was on this preseason. Jeff knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to talk to Nostra Sheil tomorrow, and we'll see what he has predicting for the future of the Seahawks after that. So make sure you tune in tomorrow. Friday, I'm going to see if I can get Dave Bowling with Mike Sando. So we have a lot of good stuff coming. And then Jeff and I have an awesome show on Saturday we've been looking forward to. We are going to, among other things, we are going to revisit the NFC West draft that we did with Rob Staten and C. Mike Spinmove, Griff, and who we thought were the best picks from that draft and what's changed over the course of this season. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody. Make sure you support us at patreon.com/hawkblogger. Until next time, have a great night. Hey, folks, this is Brian Nemhauser. Thanks for listening to the show. Hope you enjoyed it. Want you to know that Real Hawk Talk is available on all major podcast platforms. Go ahead and subscribe. Have all podcasts delivered directly to your phone after each and every show. And then go ahead and leave us a 5-star review. Helps us out, gets more people to the show. Then, if you haven't already done it, go to patreon.com/hawkblogger and subscribe for just $5 a month. Gets you immediate access to our Slack channel. Join hundreds of folks in that community to talk Seahawks about wins, losses, and all things in between. Not to mention, become eligible to win giveaways for Seahawks tickets and get to ask questions of the Real Hawk Talk crew every week on the show. Finally, if you haven't gone to hawkblogger.com recently, head on over. Tail the Tape morning after articles are there every week. Hoping to see you there. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting the show. Go Hawks.